Hello, everyone, and welcome to Above the Tree Line podcast, where we answer your questions about faith, Christianity, God, and culture. We are here with ACF Senior Pastor Will Davis Jr.
Hola.
And a special guest.
Woo.
Hello, everybody.
We have Miss Layla Cunningham, a college student at Mary Hardin Baylor, soccer player, 19 years old. Freshman. She is a freshman. And we wanted basically, in your age group, we know there's a ton of questions about the Bible. We know there's a ton of questions about God and faith. And we have this man here who has been walking with Jesus for quite a long time. So we're going to have some fun today. And you are going to be able to fire your questions at him. And we'll just see if he has an answer.
Can I go on the
for
record
all.
as saying I did not agree to this? I'm terrified. I walked in today and this is here and I'm not in control and I'm terrified.
This is called Questions from a 19-year-old.
Yes, which terrifies me.
So I know you have a bunch, but I want to kick us off with one that I know Will's going to roll his eyes at.
So happy.
Because it involves dinosaurs. So you had asked me prior to this, where in the Bible did dinosaurs exist in that timeline? What made you even think of that question?
I don't know. I guess I've always been intrigued, like when you're learning about dinosaurs, and I'm like, so where did that fall in the Bible since Adam and Eve was the beginning of Earth, and where were dinosaurs throughout history?
So you're smart and you're asking me good questions. Adam and Eve are the beginning of humanity. Okay? They're not the beginning of Earth necessarily. There's a lot of stuff going on before Adam and Eve. And those days, day one, day two, could be millennia. The word can be a day, the word can be an eon. So it doesn't have to mean that God did the world in 6 days. And so I think the dinosaurs existed in that pre-Adam and Eve day. We do have examples of footprints on the planet. The answer to your question, Layla, is I don't think they're in the Bible per se. The book of Job mentions sea beasts and dragons and things like that. Other places they're mentioned. But I don't think I know we don't have an exact location of in the Bible of where dinosaurs existed. We do have footprints on the planet of dinosaurs and humans apparently walking together. So they did coexist with Adam and Eve or humans at some point, but they're not given. Everybody asks that question. Like, were they on the ark? I don't know.
No, and that's probably why they died.
Well, or they
were
were babies. They could take baby dinosaurs on the ark.
Oh, that'd be cute.
There you go.
That'd be so cute.
That'd be something.
There is
Jurassic
a reference,
Park.
though, in the Bible about an animal with a tail the size of a tree trunk.
There's also
That's
a reference in the Bible
it's
to
gotta be a dinosaur.
flying dragons.
Yeah, those got to be dinosaurs.
So it could be. But it wasn't important enough to God to make the cut. So there's a lot of things the Bible doesn't tell us. It doesn't mean it's not a big deal, but it's just not part of the story. So we don't know. How's that for? That's not helpful.
It's not helpful because you have schools teaching you about these like fossils that are millions, billions of years old, and I feel like that's a stumbling block for a lot of people when you're learning about science and it doesn't line up with the Bible.
I agree.
So how do we fix it?
I don't know we fix it. I think we'd be okay with the tension because I think the fossil evidence, you're not asking this question, but here we go answering it. The fossil evidence indicates a sudden beginning of life. There's like no life and then there's all this life. And evolutionists try to explain that away. I think the fossil evidence actually gives support to what Genesis teaches, that there was this teeming with life as the Bible speaks of. The age piece, we're going to be okay with the tension there because the Bible's not clear on it.
Okay. So we just be okay with the tension with the dinosaurs there, Layla.
We got to be okay with the tension, Layla, on a lot of things. You're probably going to ask some questions. We'll get there.
Yes. Okay. So I want to tee you up to talk about this a little bit. You just returned from Nicaragua last night, and you and I were talking before the episode about some of the poverty. So explain that a little bit.
Yeah, I just had a question of like, why God put poverty on this planet, and will poverty end before Jesus comes back and saves us all?
Talk about what you saw for just a minute. I don't know how much exposure you had to poverty before you went to Nicaragua, or real poverty and suffering. Give us as best you can, a 30-second insight into what you saw that you made you ask this question.
I guess I just saw, it's kind of hard to explain, but you go down there. I've lived in Austin almost my entire life. I've never been out of the country, and this was my first time out of the country. And you just see people like, there's so many people in one place at the same time, and you see all these houses right next to each other, and they're not built properly, and there's like open doors and all this kind of stuff. And you go in and like food distribution, and you go in and they're so thankful for the food. And here we're like, oh, it's just another day. We get to go to the grocery store and just buy stuff and spend money, but they will like start crying because they get food. And it just like, it breaks my heart to know that there are places out there like that, and we're so fortunate over here. And that could have easily been my life if I was born over there.
And that'd be a question we could talk about. Why is it not our lives? The Bible addresses poverty. Jesus said, the poor you will always have with you. And it's not because God wants poverty, it's because God allows humans to make choices, and there's injustice in the world. There are plenty of resources in Nicaragua to solve the poverty problem. There's a really mean, bad leader over that country who won't share the resources. And when governments like ours or mission organizations like ours often give money, sometimes that money never gets to the people. And so I don't think poverty is something God created. I think it's the effect of sin on the world, Genesis 3, and leaders hoarding and not sharing. I told you, I think on the airplane or somewhere, and I was in a warehouse in Haiti that has rice. It's a football field size warehouse, and its rice is floor to ceiling, 20 feet high, that we gave that government after the earthquake, that the government has kept. And now they're selling it back to us at a profit to give to people. That's injustice. They could solve a lot of hunger in Haiti today if they opened up that rice warehouse, but they're not doing it because they want to make money on it. So that's why poverty exists. It's because God gives people free will, and we have bad leaders who hoard, and we have people like in Somalia who keep food, warlords who keep food from people. And unless we go in and just do something about it, which we're not going to do, here we go. So God in the Bible instructs the church to be the solution. Not in the Old Testament, it's the nation of Israel. Like if you had a field, Layla, and you were collecting your fruit off the field or whatever, it's wheat or whatever, you were only allowed to go over it once. Anything you missed the first time through, you left for the poor to come through after you and get what they could to live off of. You were required to do that for the alien and for the orphan and for the widow. So God has a plan for it. It's us. But when you've got governments that are unjust like this, they don't care. Then Jesus said, you're going to have this issue, and the answer should be the generosity of God's people. So that's a hard thing, and you saw it firsthand. And you're like, why? Well, it's typically because people are evil, honestly.
But God could do something about that.
He would say he is, and he would say he has. And there are a lot of problems that God's going to solve in heaven. He's given a solution. There's plenty of resources on the planet. He puts it on us to do something about it. So again, let's keep in mind that, sorry for this little diatribe here, the average Christian gives 1% away. What if the church was full of tithers? Think of the problems we could solve. Mm-hmm. Now, again, we can give money to a government. They may not get the money to people. But part of the shortage of resources is Christians don't share what they have. And God has put the money in your bank account and mine to solve a lot of problems. If we don't share it, that's part of the problem.
So because there is one evil leader, the rest of the people get punished for it.
They suffer because of it. They're not being punished. They're suffering. Yeah, it's injustice. And that leader is going to have to stand before God and give an account of why he did what he did. And you don't want to, it's going to be a bad day. But God allows leaders to lead, and he allows them to make choices. And yeah, people suffer. You've suffered, I've suffered for the bad choices other people have made. I've made choices that affected other people that are bad. That's how it works. when you sin, it affects other people. And so, yeah, there's a really bad man, Daniel Ortega, leading Nicaragua, and he wants the people poor, and he wants them uneducated because now they're dependent on him. So you were in the airport of Nicaragua yesterday. It's 912 degrees in that airport.
Yeah, it was lovely. Yeah.
I was thinking, I bet the palace is air conditioned. I'm betting the palace is air conditioned. Anyway.
But why would God allow him to be in power if he's that corrupt?
He allows all leaders to be in power, and he lets them make choices. He can't have power without God. Why did he let their emperors persecute the church? He doesn't intervene to the degree. That's not true. When Herod killed Peter, they had a prayer meeting, and in a week and a half, Herod's dead. So there's that.
Yeah.
No easy answers on that. It's hard. But it often comes down to we're not doing what God said we should do. And so he lets free will reign, and here we are. So let's be the solution. To the degree that you can, Layla, and all of us, let's share. Let's be generous. And let's not let it be on our watch that we look the other way.
That kind of ties into your question about God being angry. Talk to us about where that came from.
I guess, a lot of us get angry at God. And I guess I just started wondering, is God ever angry at us for our choices or our mistakes?
That's a great question. So there's two words that describe anger in the Bible, and one is a sudden flash of anger, like if you see something and it makes you so mad, and the other is more of an abiding, below the surface, boiling kind of anger. So you can't surprise God. And in order for God to be angry at something you do, you have to surprise him. Like, wow, Layla really messed up. I'm so mad about that. And he doesn't have that kind of reaction. The Bible says he does have the more this is terrifying to me. He does have the more abiding anger of injustice and people not doing it's that boiling anger where finally he says, enough. I'm going to do something. That he has. But he doesn't have a reactionary kind of anger because he sees what you're going to do 50 billion years before you do it. And by the way, it's okay to be angry at God. He doesn't run away from that.
So anger in and of itself is not a sin.
No.
Okay.
There can be sinful expressions of anger, but anger is a human emotion that God gave you. What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to word it, I guess. What if you spend your whole life being angry at God? He wouldn't, that's not a sin being, or what if you're angry at God for a year or 2 years, or someone spends their whole life being angry at God? Is there a difference in that, or no?
Well, again, the Bible there are plenty of people in the Bible who get mad at God, and David in the Psalms vented at God all the time. The loser in that is the person who's angry, because at some point their heart's going to get hard, and they're going to walk away from God. So the unresolved anger yields bitterness. It's okay to be angry at God, but at some point you got to go, as you've done, Layla, in your writing and other things. You've fought it out with God, and your heart's you're waking up to who He is. Unresolved anger turns to bitterness, and it's human. It can happen with humans. It can happen with God, and so you have to go and fight it out.
So it puts a strain on your relationship with God.
100%. And the person who loses is you. Puts a strain on your relationship, just like it does if I'm mad at Lauren and I don't resolve it with Lauren, it puts a strain on our relationship. And we need to talk after the podcast.
What did I do this time?
I need to see you after the podcast, just for 5 minutes. It'll be fine. I've got an abiding anger toward you. I need to get it out. It puts a strain on human relationships, and it puts a strain on your relationship with God. And He's never moved. So you're the one that's got to go fight it out with Him and let Him come to terms with what happened or why you're angry, and let Him redeem it for you so it turns to love and not bitterness.
What's the best way, or I don't know, how many ways, or what's the best way you would say to start resolving your anger towards God?
Read the Psalms. Because I think every human emotion in the Bible is in the Psalms. And if you read the Psalms enough, Psalm 73, I think one of the worship leaders goes, I was done. I was so mad at God. I was seeing the rich who are evil, taking advantage of people, and I was done. Until I went to the house of God and I saw their end. And I realized, oh God, it's not going to end good for them. And so that's in the scriptures. So the first step is letting the Bible speak for you. My God, why have you forsaken me? That's in the Bible. Jesus quoted that. Let the Bible speak for you, and then write and journal and pray and vent and take long walks and give God a chance to heal your heart. It never happens overnight. You might get a snap and feel 100% better. But the best place is to go to the scriptures and let them express how you feel, and then let God speak back through the scriptures of how he feels and how he loves you and how there's more going on than you realize and how he's going to redeem it and over-redeem it. And that typically takes time. When you've had loss or you're angry at God, it's going to take a minute typically. But the point is, don't ignore him. Just press in and let him speak back to you. Good question.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we only have like 5 minutes left.
She's doing so good.
And we have not
All in favor that I retire and Layla take my place, say aye.
We haven't even scratched the
mountains
surface
are
of all the
calling
questions.
and I must go. I know we haven't.
So, all right, this is your opportunity. What do you want to ask him next?
I did have a question about language barriers.
Okay.
Like when we went down to Nicaragua and we had to have facilitators.
I was teaching you Spanish. It was so effective.
Oh, my word.
One of the facilitators told me not to listen to you.
Yeah.
So I took that and ran, to be honest. Why did God create language barriers and like across the country and we can't communicate easily with one another?
So good. So it's Genesis chapter. Where's Babel in the Bible?
Babel.
It's 11. Genesis 11. God originally did not create language barriers. And we all spoke the same language. And then in Genesis 11, the language affordability led to arrogance on humans' part. And they were like, we don't need God. We're communicating well. We can do anything we want to do. We're going to build a tower that reaches to the heavens, and we don't need God. He's fired. And God said, this is a problem. How about we confuse their languages and slow them down just a bit so they need me? So he inserted ethnicity, which is kind of cool, into the world at that point, which included different languages. And now they can't communicate as effectively, and they're having to then, and also God had said, go populate the earth, spread out and go populate the earth, and they didn't. They'd stayed in one place. So the languages require them now to kind of circle up in their tribes, and that led to a world population, which God wanted. So in Acts chapter 2, when the Holy Spirit fell at Pentecost, they call it a reversal of the Babel effect in Genesis 11, because they all hear the languages, they all hear the gospel spoken in their own languages. And it was kind of the undoing of that curse that now God is going to take the gospel to all places, and at some point we'll have the same language again. But it wasn't part of his original plan, but humanity messed it up. So God inserted ethnicity and languages to get people to spread out and to seek him more. That makes sense? Kind of?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
I got you.
That's as good as I am. Kind of is about as good as I get.
Okay. I got one last question.
All right, come on.
In the Old Testament, why did God choose the prophets he chose?
The qualifications for a prophet were mostly teachability and righteousness. He wanted men and women, he used men and women both, who were humble enough to hear him and had the courage to say what he wanted them to say. And not everybody was up to that. And not everybody wanted to be a prophet because it was a hard job. So he would tap a person on the shoulder and say, I want you to go up to Israel and I want you to preach. And they could say yes or no. But he typically chose men and women who he knew would honor him and be faithful to what he wanted them to say. That's the best requirement of a prophet. There's still prophets today. And a prophet has to be willing to mix it up a little bit and to be unpopular and to even suffer for their message. And so God chose men and women who were willing to do that. Some of them met their deaths because of their prophecy. It was all, God looks for people, Layla, who are available and humble. And they were. And I mentioned 3 times there were women as well, not just men. Great question.
Thank you.
I did you brought up obesity in the Bible when we were talking beforehand. That's not a question that we had received from any of our
Haven't
podcast
got that one
listeners
yet.
So tee up
Welcome.
that question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I took an Old Testament class in school this year, and we just went out through the whole Testament, and then I started wondering, like, were there obese people in the Bible, because they all ate and drank the same things, and not like now where there's processed foods and all these like different kinds of things. And I wonder, like,
Spoken like the college athlete that you are,
yeah,
soccer star. Yeah, there were at least one.
yeah,
Because the Bible talks, it's really a gross scene, but the Bible talks about this man was a bad leader and someone killed him with a sword, and the fat swallowed the sword.
oh,
I do not know
Lovely.
that part of the
Yeah,
Bible.
it's there. It's in Judges. And he kills this bad leader and basically can't get the sword out because the stomach swallows the sword. This is the Bible. This is the more the PG-13 R-rated version of Scripture.
Wow.
Yeah. So we don't have a lot of pictures of what life looked like back then. They probably were healthier. They didn't have the best water, and so they didn't have obviously the health care we have, but they didn't have the junky food either. They weren't doing McDonald's shakes and burgers every day.
yeah,
But yeah, there were at least one that I know of, because they could be inactive. And kings lived glorious lives, and they ate a lot of food, and they drank a lot of wine, and they never moved around necessarily. So yeah, there's probably obesity.
So the wealthy were probably overweight.
Yeah, and also overweight was a sign of riches. The Proverbs talk about some of these. They don't use the word obese. The word is sleek, but they mean large, and it's because they're rich. They can eat a lot, so they're clearly there. Isn't that interesting? That's an interesting question.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
So when you said that at first, I was like, where's this question going? That's awesome. Well, we are out of time, and we didn't get to answer all of your questions, but
Thank
I
the
do want to
Lord.
say they
so
were
glad.
fantastic
Good way to end it, though.
questions.
Thank the Lord. Yeah, that's good.
yeah.
If you guys like this is what we do this for. If you have questions, like that's the reason we're here. We want to talk about it. No questions off the table. You want to talk about fat getting swallowing up a sword from the book of
There is
Judges.
an
We will
image.
talk about that. But I do want to say thank you to our special guest, Miss Layla. We adore you.
Thank you,
I
guys.
love your questions and the way your mind works. And this was fun. So you are.
She's never said she likes the way my mind works, so you're
no,
way ahead.
I haven't. She thinks more like
She's
me.
smart.
Yeah.
She's smart. Yeah, she's inquisitive like you are.
Very inquisitive. That was awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. More to come. So please join us again next week.